Hello, everybody. This is Nat, and welcome back to another episode in my mini-series, What's Going On? Today, I'm going to be talking about the conflict that has been unfolding in Tigray, a region in Ethiopia. But before I get started, I'd like to quickly remind listeners about our HDWNKT stickers. We have our first official merch, so please be sure to check out the design of our Abraham Lincoln sticker on our Instagram with the handle at HDWNKT. Stickers are $3 each, and they can be purchased through the app Venmo. To order a sticker, find our business account by searching at HDWNKT. And in the transfer description, please let us know the amount of stickers you want as well as your shipping address. And don't forget to mark the transfer as private in order to keep your information safe. All right, let's get into it. Today we're focusing on Ethiopia, a country with a very unique history compared to its other African neighbors. It's really been seen as somewhat of a beacon of hope for the Horn of Africa region and the rest of the continent. It's the second most populous country in Africa and has a huge influence over the continent. Ethiopia has actually never been colonized, and it was led by an emperor until the 1970s. Then a violent Marxist dictatorship took hold of the country until it was overthrown in 1991 by rebel groups from the region of Tigray. This group would be known as the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF. Tigray is a region of Ethiopia located in the north by the border with Eritrea, and it's really the main focus of this minisode. After taking power, the Tigrayans ruled the country for nearly 30 years, marking a period of stability and economic development. However, it was not a very democratic government. There aren't really any proper elections, the media is censored, and political opponents are arrested and imprisoned. Any protests against the government are met with violence from the police. But in 2018, the TPLF made a shocking concession to the opposition. They pretty much fired the current prime minister and replaced him with a man named Abiy Ahmed. The rest of the world was really excited for this change because Abiy seemed to be the figure that would lead Ethiopia back to democracy. Abiy had served in the military as an intelligence officer and was part of the ruling party when he took over. The TPLF believed that this meant Abiy would uphold the norms of the party and pretty much just do the same thing they had been doing before, but better. But this was not the case at all. In 2018, Abiy starts taking apart the political stronghold that the TPLF has over Ethiopia. He pardons political prisoners and invites Ethiopians who were in exile overseas to come back home. And one of the biggest surprises was when he reached out to their neighbor, Eritrea, a country Ethiopia had been at war with for 2 decades. Eritrea is their biggest enemy, but Abiy goes to them asking for peace. The two countries sign a historic peace deal, bringing the conflict to an end. The borders finally open up between the two countries, and Abiy is praised by the rest of the world watching. Because of this landmark feat, Abiy wins the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 for forging peace between the two rival countries. It's a bit strange when Abiy refuses to answer questions after his acceptance speech, but people kind of just shrug it off. What many of these people don't know, however, is that back home, ethnic tensions are rising rapidly. There are over 100 ethnic groups in Ethiopia, and many of them are protesting for more independence in their respective region. Before Abiy, the TPLF had basically silenced these ethnic groups, but once Abiy came into his power and began to liberalize Ethiopia, all of these different ethnic conflicts rose to the surface. Abiy panicked and started to revert to the old ways of the TPLF government. He started to censor the media and arrest political opponents, and the police became more violent against its citizens once again. At this point, it's important to note that Abiy Ahmed is from the Oromo ethnic group. The Oromo Democratic Party had formed a coalition with the TPLF and 2 other political parties back in the 1990s in order to overthrow the dictatorship. But when Abiy became prime minister, he took on the task of reforming this coalition. However, the TPLF decided they didn't want to join this new coalition and tensions between Abiy and the TPLF began to develop. When the COVID pandemic broke out, Abiy announced that he would be postponing the 2020 elections because it was not safe. Many people, including political members of the TPLF, were outraged by this decision. They accused Abiy of using COVID as an excuse to push back elections because he was concerned he would lose. Despite this announcement, Tigray went ahead and had its own elections, but the federal government refused to recognize the results. Tigrayans responded by saying that they didn't recognize the legitimacy of the Abiy government. It was at this point that the federal government decided to cut funding to Tigray. Reports started surfacing that military units were being moved around in the region. Then, about 8 months ago, while the rest of the world was focused on the US elections, in the early morning of November 4th, 2020, Abiy issued a statement saying that the Tigrayans had carried out an attack on a federal military base, and the government was forced to respond with a military action against the Tigrayans. Abiy assured Ethiopians that the government's response would be bloodless and finished with a few months, but it quickly became obvious that this would not be the case. For the first months of the military conflict, it was hard to know what was going on because there was no access to local media from outside of the country. Phone lines were being cut off, and aid workers and journalists were being permitted from entering the region. But the rest of the world was able to see the many Tigrayan refugees flowing across the border to Sudan, telling stories of massacres, widespread looting, and horrific sexual violence. Because farmers were unable to plant their crops, civilians were beginning to starve, and the federal government was blocking relief groups from supplying food or medical attention. The UN has stressed that both sides have carried out human rights abuses, but the vast majority of these abuses are being committed by the Abiy government and its allies, which includes the Eritrean government. Again, Abiy surprised the world with his military alliance with his former rival, Eritrea. And it might be confusing as to why Eritrea would agree to support the military forces of Ethiopia, but basically the reasoning for this unlikely alliance is that Eritrea sees this conflict as payback, since many of the Ethiopians they had fought with during the war had been from Tigray. Elections finally began on June 21st of this year. Because of the ongoing conflict, the election won't take place in every region. The EU will not be sending election monitors due to the high risk, and at the time I'm recording this, a winner has not been announced yet, but many international powers have voiced their concern over the legitimacy of this election. But the breaking news of this week was on Monday, June 28th, with the announcement of a unilateral ceasefire by federal forces after Tigrayan rebels captured the region's capital, Mekelle. 7 months after the government had originally seized the city, the power has shifted back to the Tigrayans. An hour after Tigrayans captured the city, the federal government declared a ceasefire, and this allowed humanitarian aid to enter the region and for farmers to carry out the region's crop planting season. The ceasefire will last until September, which is the end of this planting season. So how did a Nobel Peace Prize winner become the leader of a violent civil war? I think people were desperate for a figure that would lead Ethiopia and the rest of the continent to stable democracies, and Abiy Ahmed seemed to have enough potential to be that person. His peace deal with Eritrea was a historic diplomatic feat, but once he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, people were either reluctant to recognize the warning signs or just didn't bother to pay as much attention to his actions. Once he was labeled as a good guy, then people sort of relaxed and weren't watching him as carefully. Currently, however, there are constant calls for immediate ceasefire from all around the world. But already there have been devastating effects these past 8 months. There have been several massacres and large-scale atrocities, and although it's not clear exactly how high the numbers are, officials have estimated the death toll to be in the thousands, which includes 11 aid workers that have been killed since November. More than 2 million civilians have been either internally displaced or have fled to Sudan. And furthermore, according to the UN, roughly 350,000 people are on the brink of famine. While the federal government has declared a ceasefire, it's not certain whether or not both sides will comply with it or what will happen when September comes. We can look out for news coming out about election results and developments during this ceasefire. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.